You're listening to the Home Staging Show podcast. I'm your host, Cindy Lin. This is the show where we talk about all things real estate, home staging, and styling your home to live and to sell. Welcome back to season 4. This is episode 3. Our show is brought to you by our in-house product, EcoJo, the eco-friendly St. Joseph statue home selling kit. In real estate, there's a tradition of burying St. Joseph statues for good luck. But because all the existing products on the market were made with plastic, we made an eco-friendly version named EcoJo. He's all natural, won't harm the earth. For more information, you can visit our website at www.ecojokits.com. That's spelled ECOJOEKITS.com. Hi guys, welcome back to the season 4 episode 3. We're kicking off a 3-part money series this week, which is something we really haven't talked a lot about. I know we talk about budget on some of the episodes, but I want to talk about the overall money picture for you. So to kick off, we have Catherine Hawley, a certified financial planner based in California, on the show today to talk about how to plan your finances when it comes to real estate. I really love her sensible approach toward investing and planning for a rainy day. I hope you get a lot out of episode today. For the part 2 and part 3, I have Mariana Wagner, who is going to talk about mortgage. She also have a real estate background. Her and her husband are one of the top earning real estate agents in the state of Colorado. It's actually very impressive, and that was a really great conversation. So I'm really looking forward to posting that as well next week. And on the show on August 24th, episode 5, it's going to be Denise Hughes. She's going to talk about money and attitude. She's a money coach and she's fantastic. I actually worked with her before. She is very, very sensible, very open-minded, and just very, very good at breaking things down. So I'm really looking forward to our money series, and I hope you'll get a lot out of it as well. Before I start today, I just want to give you a quick update on the business course I've been working on for new stagers in the field. The course is going to be called Cash in the Cushions, and there's 2 parts to the course. The first part is for someone who's completely new. If you're thinking about home staging as a career and you don't know how to get into it, then this mini course is for you. The format is going to be an ebook format to show you how to start your profitable home staging business in 30 days or less. I get into how I personally got started as a home stager, how other people got started, different business models in home staging, different ways you can make money as a home stager, some brief overview on pricing your services, how to market yourself in the beginning, important stuff like your website, building a portfolio, copyright issues that you should be aware of when you're working with photographers, building a successful relationship with your team and vendors, how to position yourself in the marketplace, common mistakes you can make as a new home stager and how to avoid them, and how much it can roughly cost to start the business. And then also the vision for your business, which I think is very, very important before anyone gets started. So we're going to go over long-term and mid-term goals and your short-term goals. So the whole format's like an ebook, but it's also a workbook. There are going to be worksheets in the book for you to go through and kind of work through how you're going to set up your business. The second part is a full business course with 6 modules. It's basically a boot camp. It's designed for those of you who have started your business, but you want more guidance on how to build a profitable business. In the mini course, we really go over the foundation. In the full course, it's going to be like a boot camp format. It's going to be having 6 modules. I basically let you look at all the business operations I have. Like, when they have that saying, look under the hood. It's basically what the course is going to be about. It's going to be about what I did really well in my business, what I've learned, and what I wish I had done instead. The course will cover foundations, more pricing stuff, working with clients, technology, tools that I use all the time, marketing strategies, hiring, how I hire and train my team members, what worked really well and what really didn't work well, legal side of things. I'm actually going to show you my contract, paragraph by paragraph, for example. I'm going to walk through it to show you why my lawyer and I wrote the contract this way. The templates that I use, workflow I've created, and scripts. I use scripts for almost everything because they really take emotion out of the business. At the end of the day, it's a business transaction, even though we might get upset and get offended or taken personally by some of the things clients say. I have email scripts about asking for contracts and payments, follow up with clients, dealing with client objections like, hey, can you offer me a discount? That type of thing. So in the bootcamp, so the bootcamp will come out probably around Thanksgiving time. This way you'll have all of the holiday breaks in January to work on your business for the year. If you're interested in signing up for the course, the Cash in the Cushion mini course will be available at the end of this month. We're going to have an early bird sale coming up soon, probably sometime next week. So if you're interested, you can sign up on the email list to be notified. You can sign up by going to the show notes. At the end of the blog post, there's going to be a sign up link there for those of you who are interested in the business course. So that's all the update I have so far for the business course. It's something that I've been working for a long time. It's something that's been on my mind for a long time, actually, because I really think that it's really important to have these kind of conversation and to help you guys, the new stagers, to move forward in your business. Because if you do your business right, you do a really great job for your clients, you are really going to change the industry. And that's really my sincere hope, is to really change the industry for the positive. I think home staging has an incredible potential. It's really have been proven. It's not something that's like intangible. There are actually statistics that prove that staging help home sellers to sell their home faster and often for more money. So it's really great work that we're doing. So I'm very passionate about helping new stagers to grow their business and to make sure they have a profitable business so they can be in the business for a very long time. So that's basically my spiel for the day for the business course. Without further ado, let's start the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you so much for being on the show. I'm really excited to have you because I think money is something that we really haven't talked a lot about on the show. And obviously is so important. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you get started in personal finance?
Sure, Cindy. Thanks so much for having me on. Well, personal finance, it's almost something that, unlike a lot of children, my parents grew up, talking about their finances and different financial decisions. But when I graduated from college, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to help people and run my own business. And so, I gained exposure to the industry and then kept gaining knowledge and then eventually started my own practice, which, today I've been running the business now for about 4 years and, work with a variety of clients all over the country, which is a lot of fun.
That's very cool. And so what exactly is a CFP and what does that entail?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So it stands for Certified Financial Planner. And then, it can be a little bit confusing as far as what services they offer because it can really vary. Some are more focused on investments, some are doing comprehensive planning. There's a wide variety. I think there are over 70,000 CFPs worldwide. Mm-hmm. But as far as what it entails, there's an education aspect, which has classes that involve, tax, investments, estate planning, those sorts of topics. Then there's also an exam, and then there's an experience requirement, which is 3 years of experience in the industry, as well as a continuing education requirement once you have the CFP marks.
Wow. So what kind of finances do you specialize in?
Well, I would say that when I'm working with a client, the way that I add the most value is probably helping them make the financial decisions that are part of their day-to-day life. They have to, be living that plan. I work primarily with people who are in their 20s and 30s, which is different than most CFPs. So, they're focused on things like growing their careers, starting families, paying off student loans, and also buying houses. So anyhow, I think that'll tie into some of our other places in our discussion.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's a really great niche because I think most of the time people think of financial planner as for like for old wealthy people.
Right,
But
right.
that was certainly the impression I got. Because I think in my 20s, I went through this phase where I really wanted to learn how to invest my money, like no matter how little I had it. But also, I also grew up in Asia, so like it was always drilled into us that we always have to save it. So
Hmm.
I think that's why I have a very conservative view when it comes to investing money.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I wish I met somebody like you when I was in my 20s.
But I think that, to your point, starting with earning and saving, I mean, that's really where, I want my clients to be starting because the investment piece, although that can be an important part of the plan, it's not the most impactful piece when you, until you've really accumulated that wealth. And how do you do that? Well, you have to, grow your skills and then, be a diligent saver.
That's very cool. And then so what like how I guess my question is like how much money do you need to start managing your personal finance? Or is that a dumb question? Is it like any amount you should
Well,
start doing it or how does that work?
yeah, I think it's a great question because I think that it's really not necessarily the amount of money. So I think that that might be kind of one of those misconceptions. For instance, I spoke to someone yesterday who she's a junior in college and she's interested in the profession. And we were actually kind of talking about this very topic because she has a little bit of student debt. She's very debt averse, which is great. I wish that more people, took that approach to student loans. And she felt like she's waiting to start her plan until she can graduate from college. And, even though she probably technically has a negative net worth at this time, she's growing, her skills, her knowledge, her, human capital. It's kind of, one of those terms. Um, and so it's all building on her financial plan. So I don't I wouldn't say there's kind of one dollar amount, and certainly for me I don't have like a dollar amount that I require my clients to have in order for me to work with them. But some financial planners will have those types of minimums, so I kind of see it as an ongoing process that might start with tackling student debt, getting your first job, making sure that you're taking advantage of the employee benefits offered to you for that job, establishing an emergency fund, and then, through that, continuing to, live below your means so that you're able to save.
Interesting. That's really cool. I think that's really great to hear because I remember going to a talk that the design center was putting on and they invited a financial advisor and then she was just like at the end of the talk people were like, oh, so how do we work with you, right? But she
Hmm.
gave a really great talk. It was really interesting to hear her perspective and she was just like, my client needs to have at least a $1 million net worth, and I was just like,
Right.
well, that kind of puts it out of the question. So yeah, so I think that was a really good um answer for that. And what are some of the most common misconceptions about financial planners? Are there any other ones?
Yeah, I think that, well, one I might have touched on just a little bit, but I think a common misperception is that, and maybe it's a misperception of clients that come to me, but I think that sometimes they're asking questions about the portfolio and I always tell them, look, the portfolio is not your plan. So, um, you know, that's of course part of the plan and I want to make sure that my clients are making prudent decisions about their investments, but there are all these other aspects of their finances. And then the other thing, and this is maybe more in response to your last comment, but when a financial planner requires $1 million, usually that's $1 million of investable assets that planner can manage. And then, but what about the real estate? You might want feedback on your real estate, and you know, you may have a few $1 million in real estate, but can you get advice from that person? That makes it a little bit tricky. So, and we had touched on this a little bit, off air, but I grew up in a family where real estate was, part of certainly my parents' plan. It's the business my dad is in. And so, it seems like, it's just an important part of your overall finances, particularly that for people that have real estate. And so, not all advisors will advise on it. So you have to, do a little extra digging to find someone, who will.
Yeah, no, I definitely see that happening. And I know we're going off topic slightly, but we talked
Sorry.
about
Yeah.
this. No, we talked about this earlier too, with buying and selling real estate. So obviously we live in San Francisco Bay Area. It's a crazy market. I mean, our starter home is around $800,000. So like,
Right.
how realistic is it for somebody who has a five-figure or maybe a beginning six-figure salary to purchase a house?
In the Bay Area, that can be really challenging, and I've talked to clients about that. What I like to do is, like, let's say a client comes to me, and maybe it's going to be a real challenge for them to buy a home in the Bay Area. I we go and we look at, well, what would 800,000 of house cost them on a monthly basis, and then they can start practicing that to see if that's something that they want to do. Because it sounds really appealing to buy a home, but then if it's eating into all the other all the other goals, all the other things that you can do with that time and money, they may not see that trade-off. And so then let's say they still want to buy a house, but they really do realize that, gosh, it's just, too expensive at that price point. Then we might look at things, if they're still really keen to buy, we might look at things like, could they buy a vacation home somewhere less expensive? And then, could they rent it part of the year, and could that be cash flow positive? And so, there's kind of an investment element, but a use element. And then they kind of have that, some of the psychological benefits of home ownership without, buying a house that, is maybe a burden financially.
Yeah, I remember. I think that's a really good way to approach that. I remember at a networking event, and I met this guy who's from Europe, and then because he was like a networking event, of course, you're like, what do you do? Blah blah blah,
Sure.
and he was like, real estate kind of is a weird thing in America, and I was like, how so? He's like, most countries in the world, most people rent. Like, you don't ever buy a house because you pretty much can't afford to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And realistically, a lot of Europeans move around a lot. So it's not realistically to purchase a house in today's generation. It was kind of interesting because I was in Italy earlier last week, and a lot of Italians, they basically have houses, like homes, handed down through generations. Like the newer generations actually don't purchase a house because they just get a hand-me-down from the family.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so like the American dream, the quote unquote American dream of purchasing a home is actually very particular to America. And I think it is something that I feel like we're brought up, in schools and kind of like to push for, like settle down and buy a house, the white picket fence, and that kind of life. But I think also with the younger generation now, buying a home may or may not be that attractive anymore because a lot of younger people do want have flexibility to move around. Or a lot
Sure.
of things we've seen in the Bay Area too is that people are no longer buying in Bay Area. They rather buy somewhere in Utah where they can commute into the city for their city jobs.
Right. And as to your point too, even for Americans, if you plan on moving quite a bit, then you probably won't be gaining, you may not be gaining enough equity to make it a, good financial decision, or, with your fees and closing costs and those sorts of things, if you're going to be in your house for, you're going to want to live there less than 5 years, and you run the numbers, it might really make good financial sense to rent and give you that flexibility.
And so we just heard what you would advise if someone is planning to purchase a house. How about selling a house? What kind of things do you recommend your client to get ready for?
Sure. Well, that's funny because I haven't dealt with that as often, just because of my client base. Most of them are, have been purchasing homes and are looking to purchase. And, we really emphasize practicing all those expenses first. But as far as selling a home, what I've seen is that oftentimes there's kind of this bias that uh, the person will, think that their home is worth more than it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then that, because they get emotionally attached. I mean, it's totally understandable. It's a very kind of, human uh, thing that we do. But then it can be detrimental because sometimes they're so focused on the price that they want to get for the home that they forget about some of the ongoing expenses of the owning the home, the energy and time spent still owning the home versus if they lowered the price and got it sold a little sooner.
Right. And then sometimes there's a little bit of maneuvering because a lot of times people are selling because they want to move up to a bigger house. So they might be looking to buy what they're selling, which can be very stressful for sellers. Have you ever
Sure.
encountered a situation like that? Or what kind of advice would you give sellers if that's something that they're choosing to do?
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, I actually haven't run across that with a particular client, but my thinking there is maybe practicing living in the bigger place or like in a larger space to see if you like it and if it works for you and is the location of that space. So you might even try renting first to make sure that's a fit, and then it gives you a chance to kind of get a better sense of that market too, and then you could sell and move. If you decide, yes, indeed, I do want to purchase this other larger home, and then I would also go back to, looking at, oh, are the property taxes, in this other area where this larger home is, those are probably gonna go up, and considering all of the expenses that are associated with that house, because I think that sometimes we kind of gravitate towards the benefits, which are very meaningful, and they're certainly we want to take those into account and consider them, but then not kind of overweight them.
Interesting. And so in your opinion, do you think real estate is a good financial investment? Like, is that really the best way to invest? Why or why not?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that real estate can be a great investment. I don't think there's any one investment that's kind of like, you know, the perfect investment. I mean, when clients come to me and they ask, how they should invest their money, unless they have a real um, expertise or they want to maybe try that out as a business, when they're, let's say, in their 20s and 30s, I'm not necessarily going to say, I'm not going to say put all your money in real estate. However, I think it can be a fantastic investment, particularly for someone who that's appealing to. If they want to manage it themselves, if being a landlord sounds appealing, where they want to be hands-on and they have all these, wonderful ways to add value, then it can be a great investment. I would encourage people to just run the numbers, because as I mean, real estate can be so many different things, and each property is a little different and has their trade-offs, and so making sure that you're really understanding the particular property that you're looking at purchasing.
That's true. And what are some of the common pitfalls for homeowners that you see for money?
Right, right. I think that probably not anticipating the time and expenses involved, and so um, I think that that's probably you know the number one thing that people are kind of they see it as this like kind of shiny object, but it's like, oh, it also takes a lot of work and to maintain your home, and an expense there too that sometimes is not anticipated, and is more than they wanted.
Yeah, I think property tax, most people forgot about property tax. But something that's pretty scary because with the home prices in Bay Area, some property tax are quite high.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's thousands and thousands of dollars a year. And if it's something that, is unanticipated, I mean, that can really affect, the other places that money can go. And, that may not be something that is appealing to an individual that, gosh, at a certain point, they want to spend that on other things.
Yeah. And then, so as we know, when it comes to selling real estate, there's quite a few things that sellers may have to decide. Something like um, a remodeling, for example, is a common one, or even
Hmm.
fixing up hardwood floor and stuff like that. So, what are some of the suggestions you may have for sellers to kind of put the money away or to get ready for that kind of big expenses that's coming
Yeah,
up?
I love this question, Cindy. So, what I recommend to clients, and this would be, I would say, for any homeowner, not just a seller, but to set up a savings account that's basically a near-term reserve and set aside some money every month that goes into that account because you know that you're going to have ongoing maintenance expenses. You know, you're going to have to replace the roof every so often, or new hot water heater, or like you said, redo the floors or fresh coat of paint, and that's going to be an ongoing expense that we actually can anticipate. And so if we kind of say, well, we may not know exactly what that number is to start, but we can use a little trial and error to make sure that we have a reasonable amount of money in that account. And so I like to start with a rule of thumb that's maybe between 1 to 3% of the home's value that we would then that would kind of be the annual amount. And we could, you know, divide that by 12 and then get our monthly savings amount for those types of expenses to make sure the home's maintained and in a good position in a good position to sell.
That's really good advice.
I'll just add a little bit to that with that strategy of that near term reserve. That can be a great thing for other types of expenses too. I mean, certainly home maintenance expenses, but even, vacations or holiday expenses or anything that's non monthly. Because what I find is that clients come up with, such a beautiful monthly budget. But I mean, I've never spent the same amount 2 months in a row. I mean, I have some fixed expenses, but then, there are things that come up from time to time. So it's really nice if, we know that throughout the year we're going to need to spend some money on our home, and we can actually make that an anticipated expense. And then that's really, it's kind of exciting to have the money there versus, being stressed out when we notice that, oh gosh, we really should be, you know, fixing this, maintaining that, replacing a fence, those sorts of things.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice. And then something that reminds me of just have you heard of that book Profit First?
I haven't read it, but the title sounds familiar.
So it do you remember that guy Michael Makowski? No, that's from Monsters Inc. Never mind. Michael something, but he wrote this book called Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, and then his new book is called Profit First. So the idea of having a reserve, it just reminded me of that book. That book is really about, I think, for small business owner and finances, but his
Hmm.
idea is to put because most people, most businesses just have one account, right, where the money keep going out from. But the thing
Right.
is, his theory is that you should have a savings account. In a way, it's like the reserve. So like you're putting money into it periodically, basically that set money aside to pay yourself, for example.
Mhm.
Basically putting your profit by saving it first, and
Yeah.
then have a different so he has all these ideas of different accounts and stuff. So to make sure that you're putting away the profit. So
Yeah, I
that
like
just
that idea.
yeah, it's a really interesting book, and a girlfriend of mine tried it on her business. She really liked it, and she was like, it actually she started doing it for her personal life as well because I think having a reserve is a great idea because I've run into so many sellers who have had unexpected expenses when it
Mm.
came to getting the home ready for sale. We had this client who found out there were mold in the wall
Oh,
during
wow.
inspection, and that's something that's really scary because luckily they found it before they did an inspection before the house go on the market, so they were able to catch it. Because if
Mm.
it were happened during the home selling process, it's gonna stall and push you back, and then there's going to be some serious negotiations, and you probably will lose the buyers because of the delays.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah, and I would even add, in addition to that near-term reserve account, I think it's also smart for people who are purchasing a home to have an emergency fund. And so, the way I would distinguish those is one is for those expenses that aren't monthly, but that can be anticipated. And then the emergency fund is for, the really unanticipated expense, like, lightning hits that tree in your neighbor's yard and it comes, crashing through your roof, or, something that you really couldn't plan for in any way. And so I think that both of those types of accounts can complement each other so that people can make sure that they're able to maintain their home without hopefully too much stress.
yeah, no, I totally agree. It's just something that is really, it's a really good practice, but unfortunately, a lot of us don't do it. When it comes to reserve, how much money do you recommend putting in?
That's a good question. That can really vary, and part of when I decide, when I go through that decision making process with clients, we'll kind of start with an amount that maybe represents around 3 to 6 months of their expenses, and that's kind of the rule of thumb that you'll commonly hear.
Mm-hmm.
However, depending on the amount of debt they have, depending on their job security, depending on kind of just their own comfort level, it can really vary. So I have clients that have a year of expenses in their emergency fund and then as little as 1 month of expenses. So, it should be customized, but, those are kind of some of the things that I think about in order to get to that final number.
I see. So you basically, so it seems like the strategies you've been talking about is basically kind of map out how much money roughly is going to cost. For example, if you're a buyer saving up for a home, you're basically trying to calculate out the monthly possible expense, and then you kind of work your way back to kind of break down those expenses and help to save for it. Is that what's happening here?
Yeah, I would say that's what's happening. I think it's always helpful if, instead of, oh, I have to save $10,000 for my emergency fund, if we can say, okay, it's more realistic for us to save $1,000 for 10 months, then we have a path to get there versus just like these huge lump sums of money. It's like, well,
Yeah.
how am I going to get there if I don't have kind of a realistic amount that I can, take care of every month, or maybe even every other week when you get your paycheck. And I'll actually look at monthly spending. So I'll look at, I'll ask clients for their checking account statements, and then we'll organize some of that information. And we'll start with, we may not have every data point, so we'll start with some assumptions and then just make adjustments about those assumptions. But at least we can start, taking action and put some savings in place towards certain goals. And then, we can kind of see, okay, how realistic is that? Are there other things that are coming up that we didn't anticipate, and just make some adjustments along the way. And
Okay.
basically use a little bit of trial and error.
And so do you basically give your client maybe like a spread, like a log or something, like they basically have to write down everything and kind of observe the pattern in a way to figure
It
out, yeah.
depends. Yeah, it depends. I think that if clients really have have not been able to save, then I want them to really create an awareness around where their money is going. And so, I don't require that every client tracks every penny because I don't think that's an efficient use of time for a lot of people. But if you're not able to save, I think that starting to track your expenses is very helpful. And, there's such a wide variety of ways to do that. And I use a lot of technology in my practice, but actually, when it comes to kind of my favorite way to track spending is in like a very tangible way. So like if you're writing it in a notebook, or if you're even like emailing yourself every expense uh, or every receipt, I think that can be helpful because I think that there's something that we kind of have to internalize about those habits versus if we're like, oh, maybe Mint can do it, and then it's like Mint can be super helpful, don't get me wrong, but I think for, this task, some of the automation, and I was just picking on Mint, but some of the automation doesn't actually tell us where our money goes in the sense that, we go to Walgreens and it's like shampoo, gifts, snacks, it's all these different categories. And if we just put Walgreens, we really don't know, where has that money gone? How has it been spent?
I see. That's very interesting. So, categorizing is very important as well.
Yeah, I would say that starting with an awareness, and then you're going to start to have some data when you're creating that awareness, and then you can start putting that into some categories that maybe you've made an assumption about before, but now you can actually see, oh, this is, I thought I was only spending, maybe the example would be I thought I was spending about $200 a month on dining out, and I realized, gosh, it's closer to 350 or something like that. And I've had clients that definitely it can be an eye opener because they just didn't realize exactly where their money was going, which is very common.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we did this exercise in college where my professor made us write down our expenses for the week, and I was very surprised that most of my money went to takeouts.
Sure.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
something that you don't really think about, right? Because, you just, when you're hungry, you go get food and you put the credit card out. Whereas if you have cash, and you really see that really going down very quickly.
Sure. Absolutely.
So how can somebody approach setting a financial goal for themselves? Like, for example, we talk about buying a house or maybe buy a car or, whatever other big or small financial decisions they might have to make.
Yeah, the first thing that I think about is why is that the goal? And answering that question, I think, can be really motivating, create some motivation out of to accomplish the goal. And so articulating why, and then backing into, what is it going to take on a, monthly or bi-monthly basis. And, we touched on that piece a little bit already, but maybe the example would be, if you want to buy a home that's $500,000, you're going to need, 20% down payment, $100,000. And then you may look at your budget and the adjustments you could make to that budget, or you may say, oh, I'm going to make more money on a side gig or whatever it is. But, if let's say you come up with a number that for $4,000 a month is doable, then, you could have that down payment in 2 years. Or you may, back into it another way and say, I want to accomplish this in 2 years. What amount would I need per month to do that? And then, how am I going to increase my income or decrease my expenses, or a little bit of both in order to get there?
Okay. So basically, one of the main strategy is just to try to cut down costs, obviously, if you cannot make more money.
Right, right, exactly. I think that a combination of both is usually helpful. And also I think when people initially think of cutting costs, it sounds like this deprivation, which is not fun and not motivating and not what I want to emphasize. But I think that if people look at, well, they're kind of choosing the goal, and that also kind of goes along with like articulating the goal. then it can be really exciting that they're choosing this goal instead. Or, cutting costs could be, oh, I'm reducing my expenses, but I'm basically spending my money more efficiently. So I'm not really depriving myself of anything. I'm just, doing the same spending I was before, but, maybe finding more items on sale or, making adjustments that don't make someone feel deprived. And one example I give there is, if you love getting your hair done and you get your hair done, every 6 weeks, then maybe you can get it done by the same, awesome stylist but do it every 8 weeks. So then, you're just delaying and spreading out that expense. And so then it creates a little more savings.
That's really cool. And so when you're putting together strategies, how does the overall market come into play?
Oh, do you mean like the real estate market when a client's buying a home?
Well, no, I guess the overall environment, right? Because obviously, when we were in the recession, no one was spending money.
Right.
And now we're in a financial boom. Everyone is spending money again.
Right. That's interesting. I think that it certainly has an effect on, you know, our psyche. When I'm talking to clients, that usually the macroeconomic climate is not our focus. We may touch on it as it applies to kind of the specific thing that client wants to accomplish, or may have questions about, oh, is it, you know the stock market's done really well, is it the right time to invest, or those sorts of things, and we would touch on that as it relates to their situation. But I don't try to time the market, or that's definitely not part of my philosophy. And so I guess in that sense, I'm not emphasizing it very much.
I see. Can you talk a little bit about investment strategies for different age groups? So, what does someone in their 20s should look out for? How about 30s and 40s and 50s in retirement?
Sure. So, we kind of hear as the general rule that you can be more aggressive when you're younger and less aggressive, as you get older. And I would say that as a general rule, that's true. But I also see that sometimes younger clients are a little too aggressive, and maybe could, have a little bit more money and less risky investments. But I also think that in your 20s and 30s, it's a time to try a variety of things. So, you may say, gosh, I accumulated, let's say, $100,000, and I think I could buy some real estate with this, or start a business with this, or, do something that maybe isn't a mainstream investment. Then that's the time to do it. And so that's the type of risk that, I would encourage clients to take, where maybe it's using their own skill set to then go do something maybe a little bit outside the box. Whereas, someone who's maybe 50 or older, they may have kind of missed that window. They may not want to take that risk and put as much on the line in a way that may not pay off for them when they know they want to retire.
So, how much risk is too much risk? Like, how do you assess what would be good and what is too risky?
Yeah, that's something that is so specific to the individual. And when I'm talking to a client about risk, it's always in relation to a particular goal. And so, that can really vary. What I find is that, it will be very goal specific. But then the other thing is that I tell clients is, let's say that there's a decision that, I would say, gosh, that seems really risky. I would, advise X. I would consider these things. Ultimately, that client has to be comfortable with the decision. So whether it's too much risk or not enough risk, they need to be able to live with that decision. They're the ones living the plan. And so maybe, example of that, maybe this isn't, such a great example, but I was kind of saying before with, if you are 35 and you've accumulated $100,000 and you've known that you want to invest in real estate and you've, done a lot of research and this and that, you may regret not trying that. And financial planners will always say, oh, you need to diversify, but, that may not be the time to diversify. That might be the time to take action and try it. And then, I feel lucky in the sense that I'm at that age where if you're 35, you fail, that's fine. You're going to learn from it, and you're going to be able to, do something new to eventually, secure your retirement and that sort of thing. So I think there's this really personal element to that, and we could even talk in terms of would the client, regret something. And so anyhow, maybe that's been a little less tangible answer than you would have wanted, but I hope it's been helpful.
No, I think it makes sense because I think everyone has a different sensitivity to risk. And finance is actually such a personal thing. I think some of the questions I have been asking, I feel kind of dumb about it because there's no really, really tailored answer unless you're really like in a one-on-one environment.
Right.
There's only kind of like the general things that we can advise clients on. Obviously if you are selling a home, these big expenses might come up, then
Right.
it's probably time for you to start a reserve account like you suggested. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
But I would say that, on a general level, no matter what the investment, whether it's real estate or even the life decision, maybe we don't even say investment, but the life decision, being really informed about it is going to help that person assess whether it's right for them. And so, maybe that's the kind of most general takeaway, is to gain a lot of knowledge.
So how does someone gain a lot of knowledge? Is it just by Googling, by reading? Like how does someone figure out? Because I think for me personally, for
Hmm.
example, um, my mom is always like, you should invest in the stock market. But I was
Hmm.
like, I don't have time because I feel like if I were to invest in the stock market, then I really need to sit down and learn how the market works and then the
Right.
trends and then what stock do I invest in. Like because my mom, for example, she likes stocks with dividends, which makes
Hmm.
sense, right? Because you get paid
Right.
quarterly.
Right.
But I mean, like you talk about, there are risks with stock. You could buy a
Right.
stock and the company could disintegrate it the next day, and then you lost all your money. For me, I
If you
haven't.
sell.
Yes. So for me, like I have been always very conservative about money, for example. So like for me, somebody maybe just be like, yeah, let's buy 10,000 shares because I have that money in my pocket. But for me, I'd be like, that's maybe buy 10, which is not how stock works, obviously. So, um, yeah.
As far as the education piece, it depends. I mean, there are tons of great resources. There are tons of wonderful books. I mean, there are different blogs you can follow. A lot of my clients, and that's my interest. That's the type of stuff that I'm reading all the time and really enjoy, and it's interesting. A lot of my clients, their expertise is elsewhere. They're amazing architects or video game designers or, working in tech or those sorts of things. And so they don't have, they're busy living their life and enjoying, their own area of expertise. And so when they come to me, I'm making sure that that I'm doing some client education that's specific to their situation. And so then the investments that I'm suggesting, that they're comfortable with them, and then also with the strategy going forward. And so for some people, I think they can be really successful doing it themselves. And then for other people, it's like they don't want to be spending tons of time making that an area of expertise, and then working with a planner can be helpful.
Right. That makes sense. Because there's so many types of different financial products. Like, how do you know? It just, I feel like like, you have to spend so much time researching each one to make sure, like, what would be the best for you and then your comfort level. So, yeah, I think having a financial advisor who knows what they're doing is very important.
Yeah, 'cause it can be overwhelming pretty quickly, and then it's almost like it's so overwhelming that no decision is made, and that's usually not the best thing either. So
That's pretty
it's
much
a
me.
challenging landscape.
Yeah, no, I hate it. I hate, like, I understand it's nice to be in the bank, but the interest rate is so depressing. It's really not the best investment.
Right, right.
So do you see different behaviors and attitudes toward money amongst different generations?
Yeah, I do. I've definitely had clients that come to me and they've seen some of the struggles that their, parents have been through, and they don't want to repeat those mistakes. And so, they've been good savers, they have good jobs, but they're just not sure. They kind of don't know what they don't know, and then they're, seeking my advice so that they're not maybe running into some of the problems that their parents, have experienced.
Interesting. Um, and then what are some of the most common mistakes that you see people make?
On a large scale, I would say that not not saving enough. So I think it's always surprising to my clients when I run the numbers and it's like, okay, this is the monthly amount, that we need to set aside for retirement, and it can often be, quite a bit of money. So, like, just to give you some idea, if you're in your 20s and you start to save, it's going to probably be about 20% of your income that should be set aside. So that's a huge, I mean, that's a large number, but it really takes that much to grow a lump sum of money that will last you from age 65 to, 95. And, that's if we're talking about like a very traditional scenario, but that's kind of a nice place to start to kind of get a sense of how much savings is needed. And then, when I'm talking to clients, a lot of times we're kind of structuring their lives in a little bit different way where, hopefully they don't feel like, oh, they're in a situation where they just have to work and then retire. Hopefully they're kind of enjoying their career, or the different activities that they have. And it can be a little bit more kind of cohesive with their life plan, if you will.
That makes sense. I think most of us, our ultimate goal is to make sure that we're taken care of when we retired.
Right.
So like, what would be some of the retirement saving strategies that you would recommend?
Oh, that's a good question. So, first off, I would look for if your employee benefits. So does your employer offer a match? That's kind of the one that, the low hanging fruit. And then from there, what types of, funds are offered? What are the fees associated with those funds? And then trying to max out whatever account, is offered through your employer. And, that's not going to be possible for everyone right away, but I think that's something to work towards. So, for instance, a 401k for 2016, that's $18,000 is the max for most people. And then beyond that, looking at different types of accounts to save in. So if you're able to get that match, that's great. You might also consider the type of account that's not provided by an employer, like an IRA or Roth IRA. And then, it could be helpful to also have some money in just a regular investment account that maybe doesn't have those tax advantages, but looking at the tax advantage type of accounts first. And so there's some limits on those. So you want to look at, if you're eligible and those sorts of things, but that's definitely where I'd get started.
I see. So what is the one tip you can give to our listeners about their personal finance?
I think we should go back to the short-term reserve, because I find that the other thing that short-term reserve does is that it can also free up money for true long-term savings, because we've already anticipated those short-term expenses. So we're not wondering, will there be any money left for long-term savings? We know that there will be, because we've created a budget that's not just monthly, but a bit more sustainable. So I think that is a strategy that can help a lot of people, no matter what your income is, no matter what your expenses are. I think that that's a really helpful strategy.
That's great. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. So that's it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening. So again, if you're interested in signing up for the Cash in the Cushions mini course on how to start your profitable home staging business in 30 days or less, do go onto the show notes and sign up for the email list to get notified when the early bird starts. If you have any questions that you'd like me to answer in the bootcamp portion of the course, feel free to reach out to me by going to the website at stageformore.com/contact and send me an email from there. If you haven't connected with us on the Facebook group, please do. I see that some of you who are going through selling process right now and posting pictures and your home staging questions, which is really great and fantastic. I also love that some of you just jump in and help everyone. So I'm also currently looking for more guests to be on the show for season 4 and 5. If you know anyone or wants to suggest someone, please do let me know as well. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and a rating on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. It's only going to take you less than a minute to do so, but it's really going to help us keep the show going. It's also going to help us book guests. So as usual, feel free to ask any questions on the show notes or in our private Facebook group. You can find the show notes by going to our website at www.stageformore.com/podcast. That's it. Thank you so much again. Have a fantastic week and happy staging.